Welcome to another bonus edition of Upon Further Review. And in this edition, we'll be talking about the Baltimore Ravens and the Miami Dolphins. You can catch this Week 14 matchup on December 7th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on your local CBS affiliates. This is Upon Further Review, and while I'm doing the Upon Further Review, I'm going to bring you some highlights of a Madden game that I played as the Dolphins. I'm taking the Dolphins in this game, so these are the highlights, just the pure gameplay from that game where I played as the Dolphins in Madden versus the Ravens. So that's what you're going to be watching while I'm doing the regular show. I'm going to go over the stats. And for the Ravens and the Dolphins, they're both 7-5 going into this game. The Ravens started out Week 1 with a loss at home against Cincinnati. They then hosted the Steelers and they beat them pretty thoroughly. They beat them by 20 points in Week 2. They then went to Cleveland and they beat the Browns by 2 points. And then they hosted the Panthers in Week 4 and they beat them by 28. So in September they were 3-1. They were red hot. But then in October they started off with a loss against the Colts. They did bounce back with 2 wins. First going to Tampa Bay, beating the Bucs. And then they hosted the Falcons and they beat them pretty handily on both of those. But then they went on the road and lost 2 games in a row. First to the Bengals, as the Bengals swept the season series versus the Ravens. They lost that game by a field goal by 3 points. And then they went to Pittsburgh and they lost by 20 points to the Steelers, their division rivals. In the Cincinnati, those 2 wins over the Ravens are big because they have a 1.5 game lead over Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Baltimore, as they're all in a 3-way tie for second place in the AFC North. But back to the schedule, in Week 10, the Ravens beat Tennessee. That was in Baltimore. They then had their bye week, and then in Week 12, they went to New Orleans, and they beat the Saints in New Orleans on Monday Night Football, and that's very impressive. It's tough to actually beat the Saints in New Orleans. I know they're below 500. They are tied for first with the Falcons in their division, but they're pretty much a team that does... they don't travel well, but they do play good at home, and the Ravens beat them in New Orleans. And then Week 13, though, the Chargers came to Baltimore, and they beat them by 1 point, and a crazy game, come from behind. The Ravens looked like they had that game, but Phillip Rivers at the end there pulled it off, and the Chargers won by 1 point. And now they're going to Miami to face the Dolphins, so it doesn't get any easier for Baltimore here in Week 14. The Dolphins started out the season with an impressive win against their division rivals, the Patriots, that was in Miami. They beat them by double digits, too. Of course, they lost Sean Moreno for the season, and they ended up losing the next couple of games, first in Buffalo and then at home against Kansas City. But they bounced back with a win in Oakland against the Raiders, a good team to bounce back against, and they had their bye week in Week 5. Then coming off their bye week, they ended up hosting the Packers. They lost that game. It was a close one. They almost beat Green Bay, but they came back to beat them in the end by 3 points. It was with the late touchdown, Rodgers to Corliss, I believe, if I recall correctly. But then in Week 7, the Bears ended up, that's where they went. They went to face Chicago, and they beat the Bears. They beat them by double digits, and then they ended up going to Jacksonville and beating the Jaguars by double digits, and then they hosted the Chargers, and they shut them out. That was a huge victory, and that was their 3-game winning streak, but that came to an end in Week 10 when they went to Detroit. They almost beat the Lions. It was a close game. They lost by just 4 points. It was a defensive battle, a pretty low-scoring game. The Lions came back to win it in the end. Then in Week 11, they ended up beating Buffalo, division rivals. They beat them pretty handily. That was in Miami. I guess a tough defense. They then went to Denver in Week 12, and they almost beat the Broncos. That was a close game. They only lost by 3 points in Denver. That's a very impressive performance. And then in Week 13, to start off the month of December, they went to New York and they beat the Jets on Monday Night Football. It was a game, I was actually listening to Mike and Mike on ESPN, and Greeny, who's a big Jets fan, he was saying it was like the worst game to watch. Or I guess if you're a Jets fan, it was. I guess even if you were an average fan or whatever, even though I'm not saying he's an average fan, but I watched the game. It was, it was football. Any football game is a good game, even if it's a bad game. Kind of like pizza. Any pizza is good pizza, even when it's bad pizza. It's pizza. You can't go wrong. Even in high school, in the lunch cafeteria, it's still pizza. But I mean, I don't know. It's almost not. But if it's got some cheese on it and it's some kind of doughy substance or sauce, anyway. But that brings us to this week, though, right here, Baltimore going to Miami. We'll go over the numbers, take a look at the statistics going into this game. And right here you see actually in the simulation, it's almost halftime. I'm up by 7 over the Ravens. But they're actually coming down the field here, challenging. So anyway, let's go over the numbers. The Ravens, when it comes to passing proficiency, the Ravens are 16th in the NFL with yards through the air per game. The Dolphins are 22nd. So neither of these teams really are a big passing team, even though they do have the capability and they do have some weapons at receiver on both teams. The Ravens, though, they seem to more, when they get going, they get hot. They can put up some big plays. Flacco can put up some numbers, and Steve Smith and Torrey Smith. The Dolphins, Tannehill, a lot of people dog on him, but he's actually better than people give him credit for. And they got some good receivers there as well. Mike Wallace, Jarvis Landry, just to name a couple. But then we look at passing defense. The Ravens are 31st. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. The Ravens let up the 31st. They're 31st when it comes to stopping the pass. So only one team is letting up more yards to the air than the Ravens. So, I mean, that's something in Baltimore. They're known for their good defense, and they got a good run defense. We'll go over that in a moment. Their pass defense, they're letting up lots of yards. Not a lot of points, but lots of yards. And the Dolphins, they have the number 2 defense against the pass when it comes to letting up yards per game. So the Dolphins, they get to the quarterback. They got a great pass rush. Oliver Vernon, Cameron Wake, they get to the quarterback. I mean, just all around, they got a good defense, but they really are good against the pass. Also, they get those turnovers, they get interceptions. Brett Grimes, he's a threat. Actually, I don't like give away something, but you'll see, because I actually had to go over and edit this footage, so I know how it's going to turn out, but I don't want to spoil the end for you. But for you, to give you a little clue, maybe figure it out. But anyway, when it comes to the passing game, I give a slight edge to the Dolphins, although the Ravens, they can, have success in the air. But against the Dolphins defense, that's what gives Miami the edge in the passing game, is because in the matchups of the Ravens defense versus their passing game and their defense versus the Ravens passing game, I think the Dolphins should be able to contain the Ravens passing game, whereas I think the Dolphins can have success against the Ravens, especially when you look at the numbers. Statistically speaking, the Dolphins have the advantage in the passing game with the matchups. So then we look at the running games for both of these two teams. And when it comes to running the ball and yards per game, the Ravens are having an excellent season on the ground, despite the issues that we all know about there with Ray Rice, and he's now available to come back. Not going to be in Baltimore, somewhere, who knows, maybe not, we don't know, but the Ravens are running the ball regardless. Justin Forsett's having a great season. Also Pierce and Taliaferro, they're getting it done. And they're 5th in the NFL when it comes to rushing yards on the ground per game. So they can run the ball for sure, top 5. The Dolphins, they're number 10 when it comes to running the ball. So they also are having success running the ball, even though they've had a lot of injuries. Sean Moreno lost for the year. Only imagine what would it be like, their running game, if they had Sean, and he'd be a part of the passing game too. And Lamar Miller has been banged up as well. He's had some injuries. So, and they went to Thomas, Daniel Thomas, but regardless, they've got a good line, and Tannehill is actually one of the better quarterbacks, actually picking up yards on the ground too, which a lot of people overlooked that about him. But so you got two really good running games on each team here. But when it comes to running defense, that's where the Ravens' strength is. Of course, there's the totally nada, the whole thing with the PEDs. I mean, it's not exactly it is and it isn't. It wasn't, when you hear PEDs, you think, oh, that was he using growth hormones or steroids or something. No, it was Adderall, which is something. It shows you right there. Stay away from Adderall. Look at Hatoli Nada. He used it. Now he's in trouble. Boom, he can't play. And the Ravens are going to be missing him big time. Such as that stuff you don't want to mess with, because that's cheating and that gets you out of the game. It's just not fair. And so now that fourth-ranked running defense of the Ravens, well, they're going to be suffering. How good are they going to be without Hatoli Nada? The Ravens, over the years, they've been a team that can, just kind of plug guys in. It seems like they're really deep, but this isn't the Ravens of old. Of course, we'll see on Sunday how they fare against that really good running offense of the Dolphins. But the Dolphins, on their side, their defense against the run, they're ranked 22nd, so not really the best run defense. As good as they are against the pass, they're not so good against the run. Not the worst numbers, but they're not really that great either. And the Ravens should have a lot of success on the ground against Miami. And so I'll give the advantage to the Ravens. That's where it is on paper. Can't really factor in the absence of Hatoli Nada, although that could end up swaying things in Miami's favor on the ground, but we shall see. So let's look at points for and against. When it comes to points scored, put on the scoreboard per game, the Ravens are 6th. They find ways to get into the end zone. That's the thing, even though they don't have a lot of yards through the air, when they get plays through the air, they're for big yards, and a lot of times they're touchdowns or setting up touchdowns on the ground. And when they get close, they get in the red zone, they just pound it in with that really good running game. And that's why they're ranked 6th in the NFL, and that's why they're 7-5. The Dolphins, they're ranked 10th with putting points on the board. Similar thing, they got that running game, they get in the red zone, they usually can score, they got a good kicker too, they don't waste red zone opportunities usually. Their defense also can score as well. But then we look at points allowed. The Ravens are 7th, the Dolphins are 6th, so that's about as close as it gets. So the slight edge to the Ravens in this category because of how many points they put up on the scoreboard. But on defense, they're both really good defenses. The difference is they're a little bit flip-flop. The Dolphins are better against the pass. The Ravens are better against the run. So they're very closely matched. I'm going with Miami. They're at home. That's a huge advantage right there. I think the way it plays out is that, they're going to end up beating the Ravens in Miami. Miami's, like I said, they play really strong at home, and I think they're going to be able to do it. I think they're going to be able to run the ball, especially without Hatoli Nada there. And I think Tannehill will have a good game. It should be competitive. It'll be close. I think it'll come down to the wire and, potentially come down to the final play. Would not be surprised whatsoever to see it come down to that last play, because especially you can never ever count the Ravens out, because Joe Flacco, that guy, he never gives up, and he can, throw passes for 80 yards. I mean, it's crazy. So, I've seen the Ravens do some crazy stuff too. So it's never over, so it's over. I think Miami will eke out the victory, maybe win by a field goal, something like that. Like I said, I think it's going to be one on the ground. It'll be really a battle of defense. It'll be one of those games for, smash mouth football fans to watch. If you like defense, you like running, this is the game for you. There will be some big plays too. Like I said, they both are capable of breaking some big plays. On paper, the Ravens might have a slight edge, but being in Miami, I like the Dolphins' chances to win this one. Like I said, I think they win it by, single digits, by one possession. Probably comes down to a field goal. But I think their defense is going to be able to do what they need to and cause turnovers and make the clutch plays in the clutch moments to get them the victory. Actually, this game's about to come to a close here. And boom, there it is. Brent Grimes, interception. That's how we do it. Remember earlier I mentioned Brent Grimes, and I said I didn't want to spoil it, but there it is. Now you see what I was talking about. Brent Grimes with the interception coming through. So I was saying the Dolphins, their defense, they get them picks. And they got, 11 interceptions on the season, 33 sacks. So they'll get after Flacco, and I think they'll win this game. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Do you think the Ravens win? Do you think the Dolphins will win? Do you like this new format of Upon Further Review? Let me know. And if you like the show, hit the like button. If you want more content such as this, go ahead and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching and listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and have a great weekend and enjoy all of the sports.